Hello everyone, today we're going to be looking at flash grenades versus gas grenades, because lately gas has been really bad lately, simply because it's been nerfed to the ground in its effectiveness, and I'm trying to see if it's still viable in some sense of the meaning. Now, this is a quick dry run without any type of flashbang or gas grenades. On average, there's usually about 3 enemies in this area with an occasional fourth from the outside. Each run is going to consist of usually killing 3 targets or 4 targets. So with that said, this is the first time I am using the gas grenade. I'm using this area just because it is the most consistent with the most amount of enemies that I can get to quickly. But the first thing I noticed when using gas grenades was that obviously the deploy time is quite a long time. It's about, I think it's like around 3 seconds to deploy, and then it takes time to deploy, and then it activates. Now, I would not expect, you shouldn't expect gas to stun or prevent them from shooting. Gas, from what I could tell from these going through all of these runs and testing these things, when the gas is released, it does seem to trigger stress in the suspects and making them run away and flee. And as you can see here, all of them were grouped up in this corner because they were zoned by the gas grenades. So gas grenades are definitely a very valuable tool in close proximity type situations where there's not a lot of room to move. And I noticed from doing multiple runs, as you can kind of see, I did a lot of runs. I probably did like 20 or something and recorded about half of them. For the gas, I noticed that they were much more aggressive. As soon as that gas cracks open from that grenade, enemies would be very aggressive, and I would have to take cover. They would shoot immediately. Even if they didn't see me, they would start shooting through walls. So deploying gas was very dangerous a lot of the time, and it wasn't something where I would rush in. I usually found it helpful when I was using it to throw into a room to get enemies to come out of that room. So I didn't have to actually go into that room and got to hear information from that room based on who's coughing. There's usually civilians. But as you can see, they start shooting at me. They're super aggressive as soon as that thing activates, and then they're going to run out of the room. It's kind of interesting. And I was curious to see if this would happen with flash grenades, and I do go through a lot of these runs again with flash grenades. It's the same loadout, generally speaking, but I did notice that whenever I was using gas, enemies were very aggressive and they would move around a lot. So here's another run. I'm trying to see like gas placement. What would be the best place to throw gas? Is it viable to throw multiple types of gas in a smaller location? Does that help? Does that change anything? A lot of the time, I usually threw it in an area in which I didn't want to go into. So for example, that room, when I would throw a gas grenade into that room, they all freak out and they run out of the room and you can take them out. A lot of the time it was tricky trying to throw it in a meaningful location to get that value out of it. Now, the gas launcher and the gas grenade, the differences, there are none aside from its ability to be shot from a larger distance. The gas launcher doesn't really offer much value in terms of like being able to launch it really far away. It doesn't really help much a lot of the time, I found. But another downside, as you kind of just saw, gas can obstruct your vision, which is another bad downside. So whenever I was clearing an area, it was important to know that I was trying to throw it in an area where it wouldn't obscure vision, and I would try to wait and let the gas deploy and let the room breathe, and then once targets started moving out, then I could take them out and then enter the room. It was a much slower process, much more methodical, and it took a lot more time to clear rooms for that very reason. So for gas, hilariously enough, I think it's really bad for any type of non-lethal run. And I'm going to get into that in a little bit in one of the examples here. But a lot of the time, the gas kind of surprised me. It was nerfed in its radius, and I think its duration. The gas radius used to be much larger and much more effective, and it would get them coughing almost immediately. But now, here is an interesting thing where there was a hostage situation using gas. Now, for non-lethal runs, that's going to suck because usually for non-lethal runs, you want to not kill your opponents, obviously to get an S rank. So whenever I was using gas and you would come across somebody and you needed to, you know, subdue them and get them to surrender, a flash grenade would do it. But with the gas, as you'll see here in a moment, it makes them retreat a lot, and it's great for drawing enemies out, but it can put a lot of pressure on you. Enemies can rush out 2 at a time or 3 at a time and all push you, or they can just run out and do whatever. And here, there's a hostage situation in here I was unaware of. I didn't hear Talk say that there was a hostage in here, but as soon as that activated, it executed the hostage because it doesn't subdue them or stun them in any meaningful time period. And then, as you see, the gas is getting to him, and now he's going to flee. I just light the door up, but you know. But it is an interesting thing to note. Gas makes them more aggressive, makes them move around, which means it's going to make them more dangerous. Now, in this run, it's really interesting. It does also seem to be much more quiet. So if there isn't a hostage situation and you are entering a room, it seems the other adjacent rooms or other locations in the area, it seems like they don't know where you are sometimes. I'm not sure if it was just like a fluke or a random occurrence, but like a lot of the time they didn't seem to react to me as fast. And I noticed enemies under the effects of gas, just for a little bit of time, were slightly less accurate. And all of this testing is done on hard mode. And the gas doesn't seem to affect them in any real meaningful way. As I said, me thinking that there is a level of decreased accuracy from the opponents or the suspects, it might be true, but it's really just speculation on my part. It kind of felt that way. And as you can kind of see, like, this guy seemed to not know where I was, even though I was totally like, you know, I was being very aggressive and going in there and throwing gas and stuff, but gas seems to be much more quiet compared to anything else. So now onto the flashbangs. Now, obviously people have been using flashbangs forever. It's great. They're a very solid tool. Compared to a stinger, stingers are just used for larger areas of like larger locations. Stuns or flashbangs are a little bit better for closer enclosed areas. Stingers have a bigger radius so they can stun more consistently, but it also risks you getting hit if you throw a stinger very close to you. So flashbangs are kind of what's really good about that. So with the flashbang, it's instant stun, assuming they are in the radius. It does appear that there is a chance of unauthorized force if you don't yell, because the gas aggroes them immediately, while the flashbang does not, which is a really interesting thing. Also, I didn't see, but when I threw a flashbang, they also cause them to execute a civilian. And it might be because flashbang caused a lot of stress, or it could have been just a fluke in that specific situation, kind of showing the idea that gas is quieter than flashbangs, which makes some sense, obviously. But it was funny. I actually had an easier time clearing with gas grenades, at least for this area, than flash grenades, which was very interesting because I've always used flashbangs as kind of like the default. And then whenever there was like a big open space and wider open areas, I would use stingers. And gas was nerfed, and now people don't really use it for probably a good reason, generally speaking. But it's interesting because gas seems to have its use potentially. Now, it's some niche uses, and I only tested in an enclosed area primarily. And I was behaving differently when I would use a flashbang versus when I would use a gas grenade. I would be more patient when I used a gas grenade so I could actually get the use of it. And a lot of the time I would use more gas grenades to get more effect out of them, to have them suspects scramble around the room. Now, I do think gas is better for lethal runs. If you are using a flashbang, it will stun targets immediately, so it's probably better for non-lethal runs. So I would basically always still recommend using flash grenades or flashbangs for non-lethal runs, since it's going to stun them. You yell at them once and they basically get down immediately. As I said, all this testing was done on hard. With flashbangs, obviously it's quicker. So if you are doing something like the school shooting one, where you need to move and quickly get into a location and disarm a bomb or save civilians, gas is going to be awful for that. It takes a long time to deploy. It doesn't stun targets. So if there's a hostage, you're not going to be able to save them. It's interesting. So each one has its kind of benefits. Honestly, I'm going to be using gas a lot more just because it's so fun. And I've been using flash grenades and stingers for so long. I like variety in my gameplay. I always try the worst weapons or whatever. And there is value in both, surprisingly. Now, when it comes to the grenade launcher, now with gas, and this is a run with me doing AI, this was when gas was first nerfed. It seemed like gas wasn't working as intended, which has kind of been fixed. When they're affected by the gas, it doesn't really make them surrender. It does seem to lower their accuracy, but the shotgun isn't really a good representation of that. So this is kind of anecdotal. So it's not the best example, but as you can see, like, he seemed to have a slower reaction time. He didn't get flashed there. He was still under the effects of gas. It seems like gas does still have a place if you know how to use it. It is an interesting tool. If you're playing online, it's probably not going to be as effective simply because people have to be willing to cooperate with how the gas operates. You have to wait for them to wait for it to deploy. You also have to be patient enough for suspects to move and react. Honestly, gas versus flash, they're pretty even based on this specific room testing. It's very interesting. And here is the grenade launcher. Do not use the gas launcher from the grenade launcher. I might be testing this more in the future. This was when gas was supposedly broken for this clip and the one before this one. But the gas radius of a grenade launcher is so awful and tiny, it doesn't seem to affect targets. It is such a tiny radius. Now I see the target. It does seem to slow his reaction time down maybe. And as I said, this was also on hard, and I just decide to light up this whole entire room. It's the similar thing. They get aggressive, they run around, but it's just the activation radius for the gas launcher did not seem to be very good. And here is the video of when I clear this room and then I decide to clear the rest of the map out. This is me going through it and clearing the streamer room and everything everywhere else on all the other rooms. If you're curious and you want to see how gas kind of operates in this level and kind of see like the experience I had using gas grenades, it was an interesting thing and I feel like it could totally be viable. I wouldn't take only just gas grenades. I would maybe take like 1 or 2 flashbangs, simply because if there is a hostage situation, it's going to be a better result overall. You do need to kind of pick and choose how you're going to do things. So, but if it's like an enclosed room like this, it's great. You can lure enemies out and you can take them out. You can get information. If there's a civilian coughing, oh, there's a civilian in there. Oh, that's good to know. All of these things are very helpful. Gas launcher is also not anything better than a regular gas grenade. Stick away from the grenade launcher, the primary grenade launcher with the rotary cannon, or the rotary grenade launcher. Definitely stay away from that. And something else to note, whenever I was using these gas grenades, it did feel like I went through them very quickly because I felt like sometimes when I would throw a gas grenade, I wouldn't get the effect I wanted. So I would end up using 2 more, 3 more in a single area. And it kind of runs, you kind of run out of gas grenades pretty quickly when you're throwing them as often as I was. And that's also why I was trying to use the gas launcher as well, because it's an extra 4 gas grenades, which, you know, is obviously nice. So it does seem very situational. So I would recommend using like gas grenades when there's an enclosed tight area you don't want to enter in, like a room. Don't throw it in any centralized location unless it is a very small room. It does seem to help with certain areas. Like as you see, I'm clearing this area, which is very dangerous, and they're not shooting at me. And I'm not sure if it's because when I shot those gas grenades, they seem to look where that grenade activated and not know where I am. It's very strange. Like on hard mode, you walk out here, it's pretty much a gamble of whether or not you're going to live. And usually they would always be shooting back. And I seem to be doing very suspiciously well using only gas grenades and moving out into a very open area, which was very strange to me. And I was trying to, obviously I didn't do this with AI. They kind of just hung out in the back. I was trying to see and test this type of stuff. And I had 4 mags total for this loadout and 8 gas grenades. And then of course the gas launcher, which is a total of 12 gas grenades, functionally. And for certain situations like this, like it's an open area, relatively. I throw it, I guess I don't throw it in a good position, so it's one gas grenade wasted. Like it sometimes it's just ineffective, and obviously that can happen with flash grenades as well. But it seemed to happen obviously more with gas grenades, because if they're not in that area, they're not in that area. And even though it's there, it might limit the space that they're able to move in, but it doesn't really like it doesn't have that instant level of speed, and you can't just throw it into a room, and even if it doesn't work, you're into the room and you're kind of committing. But and with the gas, you do have to, like, here's a situation. Obviously I can just take a shot. I'm not in any position to throw a gas grenade. I don't need to get an S rank for this. But honestly, like, gas really surprised me in its effectiveness. It seems like it's very misunderstood. Don't get me wrong, it's very nerfed right now, and I do believe that it would do better from a upgrade or a buff in some manner. Honestly, just increasing its radius by a little bit would make a huge difference, because gas, even back then, still had its specific uses. It wasn't always just amazing, because it does cloud your vision. So bigger open areas, it was still a struggle to use gas grenades. Because before, usually you had to throw 3 gas grenades before the nerf in this area, and you basically cleaned up. It was pretty much over. Very minimal issues from suspects. They wouldn't fire back as much. They would get stunned. They would just be coughing the whole time. And here, so I throw a gas grenade, and I just want to test out that idea where it's like, oh, they're going to run out. So I patiently wait. They're firing back. I know I'm in a decent line of cover, so I'm good. And I'm just waiting, and I'm just going to let the room breathe.
Oh, you gotta be shitting me.
That's the thing with this thing, is you really have to be patient when you are using gas grenades, and people on multiplayer, they're just not, right? And I get it. But it's a very useful tool. It's very surprising. So I'm moving in, and like, gas grenades are dangerous to use, because if you throw one and then you throw another, like I barely survive here. I got very lucky there. You throw one, enemies start to, you can throw like 1 or 2, and then by the time you're throwing the 3rd gas grenade, let's say you're trying to throw it all in quick succession, they'll activate, they'll cause stress, and then they'll start coughing, and then they'll start running away. That means whenever you are done throwing your 3rd gas grenade, enemies are moving potentially to you. So throwing 1 or 2 and being extremely patient, waiting for them to both to deploy, waiting longer for them to potentially move out of that area and then push you, it puts people at great risk if you're trying to throw a gas grenade, go in, and then try to take the room, because they're going to be way more aggressive. They're going to be running out, moving around, and that's going to cause a lot of issues. Obviously, just because of their high level of aggression and attacking, it's going to be a big issue, causing other problems. And then for AI, when it comes to use with gas grenades, they're awful. They don't wait for it to deploy, obviously. They will throw it. It will deploy as they're going in, and there's no real effectiveness with using gas grenades. So never, ever give gas grenades to your team unless you are going to try to control every little spot and situation. And of course, my AI ended up shooting Michael, and I'm like, really? But yeah, as you can kind of see, for certain situations, it can be really viable. And honestly, gas versus flash, there's value in both, honestly. And I'd be curious to see more use cases of using gas grenades. But that is it for the video. Thanks for watching, and have a good day.
Guys,